recording. There we go. All right. So we're at the point where we want to do some baking for this guy, right? Because I did some sculpting. Now in this case, since I'm in 3 for face mode, you see I'm seeing the face mode object, but if I get 4 for object mode, you'll notice that my modifier for multi-res is still on, but it's not showing up here. That's what level viewport does, right? So if I highlight this and type in 4 for level viewport, you'll see that this will actually show this in all your other non-sculpting viewports, right? So these guys really will show up in your render, and for your sculpting, when you're in the sculpting tools, right? When you hit 5 for sculpting, this will show up. But if you want to see your sculpt in any other mode where you're not in sculpting mode or you're in UV editing mode, that's what level viewport does, right? So just kind of remember about those multi-resolution features for your multi-res modifier. Now this time around, what I wanted to show you guys, let me make this a little smaller for my other students in class. Let's see here. There we go. Should work pretty well for us. All right. So what I want to show you guys is I want to show you guys the text tools baking, right? Because believe it or not, the text tools makes the baking even easier. Right? Remember, this is an add-on, right? You just go, type in text tools for Blender. To give you a search, you just download the zip from usually it'll have like a Gumroad kind of link to it. I'll show you kind of at the when we come back for our kind of review stuff. Later in the class period, I'll kind of show you where that's at again. But it is in the videos, right? If you go back to the earliest UV videos for this room, you'll see I show you guys how to download Blender 2.91 again. I show you guys how to download Gumroad and install the add-on. But once you have that add-on downloaded, it's a zip file. That's when you just go edit preferences, add-ons, and you just click on install, and that brings up a browser. You just find your text tools add-on and double-click on it, and it installs it. And then usually it'll just bring it up here at the top, and you just check it on, right? And you'll see that I have it checked on, right? So remember, Blender actually has add-ons, basically, right? Blender Market has a lot of them, but sometimes it's just easier to do a search elsewhere to get them. But you could go to Blender Market and just put in search for text tools if you wanted to as well. It's a nice set of tools that give us like rectify, your ability to control textile density, the nice preview map, but also comes with some cool baking tools that make baking stuff easier. And that's just one of the things I want to show you guys today. So I've got this guy up. I'm going to go to the, remember you have these little V's kind of on the side right here, right? Even in your UV editing, right? I'm in the UV editing workspace here. You see there's this little V right next to kind of the magnifying glass. If you click on that, that opens this up. And you have tool, you have view, you have magic UV for some of your other stuff. And you go to text tools, right? Text tools, that's where you have things like the UV layout that gives you rectify for taking pipes and hoses and turning them to rectangle UVs instead of kind of slightly distorted unfolds. You can rotate them, right? You have the checker more at preview. So really cool features that come with it. But if we scroll down, there's a section called baking, right? Now, technically, you can actually use multiple objects to bake, right? The thing is, though, you actually don't have to, right? Particularly if you're using multi-resolution, you don't have to have multiple objects, believe it or not. So this is where it's going to actually be even easier. Obviously, if you want to do kind of the old baking methods, you can, but I found this one just works really well. So that's the bake button right there, but I don't want to quite do that yet because I do want to click on this little pull down right here, right? And you'll see that it comes with tons of other baking options, right? So you do tangent normal. You can even have it bevel the sharp edges for tangent bevel, right? You could bake a roughness map. You could do cavity mask, ambient occlusion, right? There's even a wireframe one. So really, really crazy set of baking options if you want to. Tangent normal for us is going to be fine, right? So let's keep tangent normal. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit bake. And we're going to give it a few seconds to bake. And guys, that's how easy it is with text tools to bake a nice normal map, right? The reason why I didn't show you text tools on the first project is I want to do the first project as vanilla as possible so that you guys got to see kind of how to do this basically without any add-ons, right? With basically just the core tools. Now you're seeing we're starting to explore turning on a few add-ons, in this case grabbing text tools, which is a free add-on, right? It is a free add-on. So there it is, and we can actually even turn on preview texture, and that will apply it to the model here. Now in this case, you can see it's kind of looking a little weird there. I am going to get rid of the multi-resolution modifier. So remember, you can just kind of hit X to get rid of it. You'll see there's the normal map. I might need to go to shading Let me see here just to double check scene lights. Okay. So in this case, it baked a nice normal map for us, but we probably have to go to shading just to kind of double check that's all the controls are set up proper, right? Sometimes your color map is not plugged into the right channel. You see how the color space is kind of a little off there. You can always tell it to use UV map also. Let's see here. Let's double check. So tangent space, strength, good. It's not really quite giving me the color space option there. Sometimes it's a little weird that way. Come on. Probably want to make sure to save this texture also. So it's right there. Remember, you can actually click on this guy right here to go to image. And if you want, you could save that image. You can also, of course, go back to UV editing. There's your image right there. And you can just go to save, right? And then you can save it as a tangent PNG, right? So we can just save it to desktop if we wanted to. There we go. Of course, remember, you could go to File, External Data, automatically pack in a Blender file too. Let's go back to shading. And now that you see that it's saved, you'll see the color space. So sometimes you just have to save the texture so that Blender knows. And we're going to change the color space to something like raw. I should have changed it. What's going on here? No, that's not a problem. Let's see. Now, what's going on here? It's plugged into the right channel, right? What are you doing? That's looked like I plugged into the wrong channel, actually. Okay, that's a bit weird. It plugged the normal map into the alpha. It shouldn't. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it into the actual normal section. There we go. And now it's working fine, right? You can, of course, play with strength. So if we want, we can turn that to 5, and we can see the make sure UV's map's on. And we can see the normal map showing up properly. So that was actually the issue for whatever reason. Maybe in 2.91, it's going to automatically try to plug in alpha. So just be aware that this might be one of those things where this plugin's older, and so when you do this, you might have it plug into a different channel than what it's supposed to. But the thing is, you see how easy it is to change that? So you don't want it plugged in alpha. Remember, you want it plugged into normal, because even tangent won't really do it properly for us. So we want normal. And there's our normal map, already baked. But you see how easy the process of baking it was? And of course, the strength's right here. So the cool thing is when it does that preview for you, it also makes the nodes, right? It makes the normal map node for you. Just be aware that it might be trying to take, and like I said, raw should work pretty well too for your UV stuff as well. So in this case, linear should work okay, raw should work okay. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. Either way, but you can change your color space if you need to. This is why going to the shading node can sometimes be cool, right? For whatever reason, it plugged into normal. We kind of saw that with the kind of that metal map we plugged into, so it might just be a new feature in 2.91 you should be aware of. But just double check that it's not plugging into alpha and that's actually plugging into the right node. But it's so easy. You just click on the node and just plug it into something else. So Blender's node network is actually really quite user-friendly. But you do want this normal map node, right? And you do want it plugged into the normal channel because this gives you your strength control, so you can turn the intensity of the normal map up. So there is our normal map for that guy. I'll say that really quick. And that's how easy it could be to bake a great normal map out. But the cool thing is you saw the Text Tools bake was painless, right? Easy, baked a great quality map. So I love it. And it comes with lots of other map baking option types, right? So Text Tools is a great add-on. I love it for Rectify. I love it for some of the other, the displacement preview. So even though it's not that hard to do those things manually in Blender, right? It's just a couple of extra steps. Text Tools just simplifies some of those steps for you. In this case, remember, I'm just in shaded mode here, and we want to do the material preview, right? Remember, there's wireframe, there's shaded, there's material preview, and that's what's actually going to show you your full kind of texture. So yeah, there we go. That's pretty cool. Just wanted to show you how easy it was to bake a normal map out with Text Tools, right? And how good the quality is too. That's what's awesome. Is just it bakes a really nice quality normal map for us, right? All right. This is also its own map type. So if you wanted to paint this or kind of go in here and touch up some of these things, you can, right? Totally up to you if you want to do that or not. But it is one of those things where you could just we're here, we're right there. If you go to your Remember, when you're in texture paint view workspace, your texture should go up here. And what we could do is we can always just make sure we're up at the wrench and screwdriver, because that brings up the actual paintbrush properties. And remember, you get a color here. If you actually click on the color checker here, you'll see that one of your options is an eyedropper, right? And you can eyedrop that kind of neutral purple. Although in this case, I keep thinking of BPainter. BPainter actually has a quick key for it that samples it properly off the model. It sometimes is not good at sampling off the model unless you're kind of like in shaded mode, right? So if I went up to shaded mode up here and then did it, color dropper, you'll see it'll properly sample that purple. But you can also sample it from here, kind of up to you on which one you want to do it. But if you actually sample it on the model in the material preview, it's not going to do it right, at least not stock. And with that neutral purple, right, because you see how there's kind of that neutral purple that's not even on the model, that's kind of like your 0 for your normal map, right? And I can easily just come in here and you see I can kind of just paint out some of those areas that maybe I just don't like, right? So if I just don't want some of this kind of weird beveling areas it's giving me, we can always come in here and just kind of paint that out a bit, right? So remember, you can modify a normal map just like you can any other map type. So if you find there's maybe a little bit of stuff here because we didn't do any sculpting on there and you want to paint that out, you totally can, right? So remember, a normal map can be modified just like a color map, right? I'll just make sure to go to image here, save, Control S to save the scene. There we go. You might want to just double check as you're painting, just go image here and save as, or save all images if you have multiple, right? Once you've done a first save, right? Particularly since you're kind of creating these as separate map types, you want to be careful with that. All right, so that's how you bake a normal map down. You can modify a normal map. Of course, we can create other material properties, right? So I can easily go to my kind of a red material property here, right? The kind of red sphere. And we can see that the normal map has something plugged into it, right? See how there's a normal map plugged in. You can click on that triangle to see it all, right? There's a strength controller and everything, so you can kind of see all those controls right there as well. So your shading network is really cool, but usually you'll get all this information right in your material properties and your other views as well. So in this case, I want to create a color map. So right, we go to the little yellow circle dot, right, for base color. That's where your color map goes, right, from the quiz. And this brings up these options. We can just go to image texture. There we go. And of course, I want to create a new one, right? So we're right kind of in, it's created and plugged it in, but we want a new one. So I'll create new. We'll call this chair color. And I'm going to make it, say, a 2048. Also, I didn't actually mention this. I probably should have. Whatever your preview resolution for your normal map is, that's what it'll bake down as, right? So I'm going to hit 2048 by 2048. I'm going to hit OK. There we go. But with the text tools, right? In this case, I just baked the 512, but whatever the preset value is here, that's what will make your bake your map time down as. You see, a 512 actually worked pretty well for this because we really didn't do that much detailing. I think we sculpted on like a 600,000 polygon mesh. So a 512 actually worked well for capturing that because a 512 by 512 is going to capture about 500,000 polygons worth of data. Right, a 1024 by 1024 will capture about 1 million. So you can actually kind of factor in that whatever your resolution is of the map, kind of multiply that by like 1,000, right? So 500 is going to be 500,000, right? 1,000 is going to be 1 million, kind of thing like that. So that's a rough, good guide. It's not exact, but it's a rough, good guide. So that's why this actually still looks good. We didn't do heavy sculpting on this. That's why 512 still captured it. But whatever your actual size is here, that's what your maps will bake down as too. So when you really use that Text Tools plugin, it's a really cool plugin. I love it. The stock UV tools are pretty good, but you get a couple of extra tools with this free add-on, and you just get some cool, easier baking, easier to create preview maps and all that stuff. All right, so that color map's created and plugged in, right? And so what I could do now is I could actually go to image here, right? And actually click here. Because remember, this little pull down right there is where you can actually tell what map is going to be active here. right? Um, in this case, I can also go back up to my brush here, and you'll see that you should have multiple map types showing up here as well. In this case, I haven't saved this yet, so it's probably not going to show up until I save it properly. Remember, one of the things I like to do is, click on that wrench and screwdriver. I figure maybe like a slightly kind of yellowish brown color will be a good fill. Remember, we can go to fill bucket, right? And you do want to make sure paint's on here, right? There are a couple of pull-down options: view, paint, mask. You want to make sure paint's on here. And we can just use fill bucket to fill in that color. In this case, that did not give me the brown I wanted to, so let's double check to make sure. There we go. That's because I actually set that brown on the regular paintbrush, not the fill bucket. So we can go back there and fill it again. And now that chair is available, you go to image and you can save. And we just call that, chair color PNG, save image. Control S to save scene. And now we've got that color filled in, right? Now at this point, if I want to, I could do some other stuff with this color map, right? I could easily go to 3 for face mode. And I can grab a face here and then right bracket to do select linked, right? Remember, right bracket is your select linked. And then, of course, we can go back to 8. Remember, 8 is your quick key. 3 is faces, 4 is object. 8 is texture paint, right? So you see right here, and you click on this pull down, 8's texture paint. And remember, you can actually just turn this guy on right here, right next to texture paint. That actually does the masking. And with this fill bucket still on, I can go pick a different color. Like I said, maybe go to kind of more of like a reddish gray color, darker, or bluish gray. You could fill that, and now we've got a different color for that one. So slowly but surely, we're kind of getting this all worked out for us. Remember, you can go to save all images, right? That'll save every image and any modifications you've done to it. All right, so there we go. Now in this case, I want to do a little bit of, since I'm already on the color map, I do think I want to paint just on some stenciling for the cushions here, right? So in this case, I think I'm going to do a quick fabric texture grab. Remember, you can go to textures.com, of course, do this. It's the safest. But for me, I'm just trying to, because I'm on the new computer, right? I don't have a lot of stuff on it yet. So I'm just going to grab a fabric texture really quick. Just kind of from the internet, right? Remember, if it doesn't have a watermark, you're probably okay. But you do want to be careful, right? So let's just save image as. Remember, I'm just doing this as kind of a test. I'm not actually going to use it for any production stuff. Just kind of briefly just getting something down for us. Just to show off the stenciling. All right. So in this case, I've got that on, right? But remember, you can actually go to select, and you can invert your selection. And then it flips to this one, right? So remember, the select menu is still there. Control-I is invert, and that'll invert your selection. So now this one's the masked off one. And you could easily then just go back to your paintbrush, right? Now in this case, sometimes you might want to minimize this. So I'll kind of make this smaller. Right? Remember, you can always grab that little bar and drag over. And you'll see all of your options here. Now, they are in your brush as well. So use texture, texture mask, all that stuff. Stroke space is fine, so those defaults are fine. When we want to go to texture itself, right? Now, I'm going to go new texture. That'll create a new one there. Then you want to go to the little kind of very bottom kind of red checkerboard here. And you'll see your new texture is already there, so I can go to open. And then what I can do is I can just go find that fabric here. And now that's loaded in as an option for our texture. We can just tell it to use that one, right? And whatever ones you load in will be in here now, right? You can click on this one right here and you'll see them there. This is actually one of the cool things BPainter does for you guys if you want to eventually add it, is it gives you actually browser folders. That makes it a lot easier just to look for your stuff, any textures you want to do. Now, I don't want to use the texture mapping type tiled, right? I want to switch to stencil, right? So remember, in that same texture menu where you load a texture and you want to change your mapping to stencil. Once you do that, you'll see there is now a texture. And remember, shift right mouse button zooms, right, scales, right mouse button moves, and control right mouse button rotates. Now, you will notice that your alt right mouse button won't zoom in, right? So you might want to use scroll wheel just temporarily when you're doing painting here. But right mouse button moves it, shift right mouse button scales it, and control right mouse button rotates it. And you see how you can actually get a better control over your rotation or your scale by kind of grabbing the sides instead of trying to do it from the center. It kind of gives it a more controlled rotation. And of course, Alt left to rotate my view. Alt middle mouse button to rotate it. And then of course, control right mouse button to rotate there. Maybe shift right mouse button to scale it up a little bit. And then you see we can go in here and maybe make my brush size a little smaller. And we can start to paint this guy, right? So remember, we have this ability to use stencils to paint exactly the texture we want on here, right? So this could be a great way to kind of go in here and just add some fabric texturing to it. You see how it might get a little weird here, so I'll often just come in here and just kind of paint a little bit extra there just to kind of clean that up a bit. There we go. There we go. And you see how it won't paint on those because of the masking. And then we can just go up here, a little bit of control to rotate that. And we paint this. There we go. All right. It's just kind of getting a little bit of texture painting on these areas. Maybe go to the side here just to do a little bit of touch up. You can always make your brush size a little smaller. But it's often a good idea just to go to kind of the corners here just to kind of touch up where it gets stretched or distorted a bit, right? Because remember, the projection painting works from your camera view, right? And so any polygons that go really face away from the camera are not going to be painted that well, right? So there's your stencil, right? And then, of course, if we wanted to, we could go back to texture here. We could turn off that texture for the moment, set this back to, say, view plane, and then all your normal functions work. I can just go back here, save all images, Controls for save. And now we've got that painted, and what we could do is we could do a simple bit of metal painting, right? So I'm going to go back to select, invert to kind of go back to this one. And I'm going to go back to my little red sphere here. And I'm going to go down to metallic. We're going to turn that up a bit so we get that nice little kind of metal look for us, right? And then I'm going to go down to roughness, and I'm going to plug in. I'm going to go to the little dot in the roughness. And I'm going to scroll up to image texture. There we go. And of course, we could do new. We'll call this chair rough. There we go. Hit OK. And then what we could do, of course, is we could paint this in. Now, remember, this might be plugging into the alpha node, so you have to be a little bit careful with that. So I'm going to go back to shading really quick. Zoom out a little bit here. And let's see, there's the node there. And see how the alpha itself was plugging in? So it's kind of a thing with Blender lately. So just switch it to color, right? You just kind of grab on this guy. Click on the roughness again. There we go. And what we can do is we can just click on the color dot and plug it into roughness. And that'll do the proper effect for us, right? So be aware that you might see things get plugged into alphas instead of colors. And you might need to change that quickly in the shading menu, right? So there we go. In this case, I've got this selected. And I'm going to go back to fill bucket. And I'm going to go back to my wrench and screwdriver. And actually, I think that'll work. So I'm going to click on that. And you see how that's not quite super reflective? It's a little bit more of kind of a brushed metal effect. And like I said, you might need to touch up your that normal matte painting we did there, right? To get that look a little nicer. Just keep that in mind. And then, of course, we could go select, invert. And in this case, I'm going to pick black. So I could flood paint those guys. Actually, I think it might need to be white. There we go. So if it's not black, it's white, right? It's always the inverse. That way we're not getting metal here, but we are getting metal there. And of course, I could turn this off to not mask anymore. We go back to brush. And if I wanted to, I could go to kind of where these buttons are at. And we could paint a bit of metalness there, right? So I'll kind of paint that black. There we go. And we could just get a little bit of metalness right there on those buttons. And remember, if need be, when you're in the paintbrush ones, you can go back to color. And I could always just kind of repaint over those colors with say, a lighter gray, right? And you see how it'll make the metal pop. So the metal isn't just the metal channel, it's the color as well, because you'll kind of see that color underneath. And you see how we can now get some metal for our legs. We can go to image, save all images here. Let's save that, Control S. And if need be, like I said before, we could go back to the tangent map normal. And I could always easily go back in here. And man, oh, I don't know why that painted that gray. That shouldn't have. Brushes. Let's do that proper sample again here. Sample. Grab that proper purple. There we go. And now you'll see that's actually properly painting that kind of normal map out of that section a little bit there. But I don't know why that purple didn't sample properly before, but now it's good. But remember, you can modify your normal maps after the fact, right? So if you are running into an issue where the normal map was awesomely baked, and it actually baked everything it was supposed to, it's just, you know, low-res objects don't always bake perfectly great for that stuff. And now we've got the chair. Some normal maps, things like that. Save all images. Control S to save. There we go. I don't know why it keeps painting that way. Anyways, but yeah, so you can always kind of touch those up a little bit, paint all those things. And now we see we've got the chair, right? If you want, you can always turn scene lights on and switch around your scene lights. One of the things you'll see is kind of dark on the back here. One of the new features to 2.91 is they actually can allow you to turn off the world space lighting lock to that, so that you'll always have kind of nice lighting on your model no matter what view you're looking at it in, which is a neat little addition, right? All right, so that's going to be a great place to stop. We went pretty long today. I think we'll meet for like 2-3 minutes at like the 10 o'clock time period. I just wanted to get this done for you guys and have a great new video for these things.